Have you ever found yourself irritated by the sound of someone's breathing and then wondered, is this menopause or have I just hit my limit with humanity? Midlife often brings emotional shifts that nobody warned you about: irritability, overwhelm, brain fog, and a suddenly very short fuse, to name a few. So many women feel shame or confusion around these changes instead of understanding what's actually happening to them. By the end of this episode, you'll feel normal, validated, and equipped with a few tools to navigate the emotional roller coaster you may be on in midlife. So, today we're talking about what it really looks like when your tolerance drops, your emotions feel louder, and you start wondering if you've changed or if your body is just asking for something different. We're not brushing it off, we're not apologizing for it, but actually naming what's happening, understanding why it's happening, and giving ourselves permission to respond with more compassion instead of guilt. So if you found yourself feeling more irritable, more emotional, more overwhelmed, or just done, this episode is for you.
Welcome to Letting Go Loudly, the podcast you never knew you needed. We're your hosts, Leah Lanham and Heather Hetchler, two midlife women, two certified coaches, and two friends who finally got tired of living by the rules we never agreed to. Around here, quiet compliance is officially canceled. We're letting go loudly and taking you with us. Now back to our show. Let's jump right in, Heather, and talk about midlife and menopause.
Ooh. And this is a topic actually that we had some listeners write in and ask us to talk more about.
Yes, absolutely. We all have to go through it, I guess. Even if I have some friends who've had like hysterectomies, and that does not mean that you will not go through menopause.
No, sometimes it's forced menopause.
Yes. Yep. And they may
Absolutely.
have that a little bit earlier in life than most of us. But either way, one minute you're fine, and the next minute you might be crying over a commercial or snapping at somebody that you love or feeling rage come out of nowhere. Have you ever had anything that made you react that way, Heather?
I think I found that as I'm in menopause, that my emotions are more intense. So I tend to be more of an emotional person anyway, and I have always cried at commercials, but it seems like it's a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be honest with you, sometimes been surprised at how I'll say short the response feels internally. Like things that didn't normally irritate me before, sometimes I can feel this sharp, like, what?
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a shorter fuse for injustice.
Yeah.
Like if someone cuts me off or someone says something super rude or, and I don't have a desire to like snap, but I want to have a conversation, or I find my mind saying like, how could they say that? Or why would they do that?
Right.
And then sometimes figuring it out in my head, uh, and it's probably not the right story to have, but just kind of thinking about something a little bit more than I used to.
Right. I totally understand that. And I feel like I'm not more emotional, but I definitely stand my ground a lot
Yes.
more than I used to.
Hmm.
And my kids, like to their embarrassment, they're like, Mom, what? Why are you doing that? It's like, well, why wouldn't I do that? If somebody takes something or cuts in front of you in line and you're waiting and you have somewhere to be, of course I'm going to talk to them now. I'm going to say, excuse me, please. I've been standing here for 20 minutes and that's just mortifying to my kids. But I feel like I have, I'm more ballsy.
Yeah.
I
No,
just have, I just have more courage.
and it's true. And I think we're in that, we talk about this, like many of us are caring for our aging parents. And we have kids, and I feel like sometimes too, as an advocate for your parent,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
see your parent maybe getting taken advantage of, or things not explaining things well, or sometimes not wanting to rock the boat, I want to protect my parent. I want, you want to stand in there for
Yes,
them.
I forgot
And
about that whole
uh,
aspect.
so there's a lot here.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I feel that way when and I didn't even think of that when we were talking about this first, but with my dad, I feel like sometimes the doctors just want to go over everything really quickly,
Mhm.
and I try to slow it down because I know that he's probably not understanding, or he might be understanding, but it's just going fast, and I'm going to be the one looked at for him asking questions to afterward.
Sure.
So I need them to slow down for me. And I just, yeah, and I'll say it now rather than sit there and shake my head. Oh, yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
No,
because
like, what do you mean by that? Why does he have to do that? I ask why a lot more than I did in my life.
yeah,
I ask why all the time.
and that's
Drives people
important to do.
crazy.
And I think, I was thinking like it's not that you're necessarily or that women are more emotional. I think we're just more honest.
Right,
And we're a little less tolerant of like being silenced
right.
or pushed down. It's like we're allowed to ask why. We're
Yeah,
allowed to ask the questions. In fact, it's healthy to do that.
right.
But I think for so long, that was pushed down, or our parents, especially their generation, they don't like to
Oh, yeah.
rock the boat. That's the term my
Yep,
mom likes to use. I don't want to rock the boat.
right. They
Which I
want
don't even know
just
what that
love and
means.
peace and
Yes.
happiness to
And
everybody.
they're willing to take less sometimes to not
Right.
do that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think sometimes it's about being more honest. And one thing I wanted to share too, because this is a mix of having honest conversations, but talking about things that there are things that happen in menopause that affect us, like physical things. And estrogen helps regulate serotonin and dopamine. And these are chemicals that really help us feel calm, motivated, and emotionally steady. And in menopause, estrogen depletes.
Oh, yeah.
And if this wasn't something that anyone explained to me. I'm a breast cancer survivor and my breast cancer was estrogen fed. So the medication takes all the estrogen out of your body so that it can't potentially feed cancer if it comes back. Well, that throws you into menopause and so
Doesn't help,
not
that's for
explaining
sure.
that, is important. And, when estrogen fluctuates, your emotional shock absorbers are weakened. And so you're gonna maybe feel more irritable. You're going to feel something maybe more intensely. And the translation here is that your feelings aren't wrong. They're just louder. They're
Right.
just louder. And something that I like, we talked about this and I like to use with my clients is that this explains what's going on. It doesn't excuse it. It doesn't give us a permission slip to fly off the handle or things like
You just
that.
have to be more
But when
conscious.
that happens, give yourself grace.
Mhm.
You go back and apologize, but you know that there's something happening. And I think that and when I've talked to women too, they recognize that's happening and they think it's just them and they're embarrassed or they're ashamed. Like,
Right,
why do I feel like this? And I think it's important that we're having these conversations to normalize. It's not that you suddenly lost emotional control, it's that the buffering system your body used for decades is changing.
right. And I could we talked about this a little bit beforehand. I think I apologize more in my life in the last 10 years
Yeah.
than I have in my whole life.
Yeah.
Just because I realize that some things just come out and they may be misconceived,
Hmm.
and I really need to be ready to apologize if I've hurt anybody's feelings. And I don't mean that like I'm a mean person and you say,
No.
but sometimes I just speak my mind and it's not um perceived the way I want it to be. Or I don't think before I talk. So some things I've learned is just I really need to give myself a couple counts
Yeah.
before responding to things.
Hmm.
I don't want to just respond, just come off with what's on the top of my brain because sometimes it's not the nicest thing.
Yeah, and
So,
there's no shame in what you're thinking,
right,
and it is about kind of learning how to train yourself to respond instead of reacting.
right,
And I think sometimes in midlife and in menopause, there is more of a tendency to react to something.
right.
You feel hurt, you feel angered, and you want to react, and learning to slow down and to respond. But
Hmm.
we're human; we're never going to get it right all the time.
Right,
And I personally have a lot more respect for somebody who comes back and says, "You know what? I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have sent you that email, or maybe
right,
I shouldn't have said that. Like I was in, whether you have to explain it or not, but just like, I'm sorry." And you know what? We all make mistakes. We
right.
all say things.
Yeah.
And I think that's great that you feel that you are willing to say you're sorry.
Well, yeah, and you have to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you do.
No choice.
And do you think, because I thought about
But
this as you're talking, I feel like I'm less, when I was younger, I felt like, like my boss would be like, "Oh, the report is late," like somebody else's report. And I'd be like, "Sorry." And it wasn't even something I did. I would just apologize just to keep the peace. Like,
right,
"Oh, the weather's bad. Sorry, it's snowing." Like, I have no control over the
right.
snow.
You
And
sorry a lot.
I don't do that at all anymore.
Yeah.
But now I will. I'll apologize if I've hurt someone's feelings,
Right.
and I really value if a friend comes to me and says, "You know what, Heather, like this hurt me," or this, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't
Because I
realize
didn't
that.
even yeah.
I want to repair and restore our
Mhm.
relationship." Because conflict is natural and it's
Yep.
how you come back to center. But I think this brings us to what we wanted to talk about too, which was a second point, is the zero tolerance era at letting go loudly, right? It's if you feel your patience has vanished, you are not alone and you're not becoming a bad person. And I think we do. We sometimes enter this zero tolerance era in menopause.
Right. And some of the questions we need to ask ourselves are, what things do you no longer have tolerance for? Maybe there's a series of things that, like driving. I
Yes.
know a few of my friends say that they just have road
Yeah.
rage now because they just can't tolerate when somebody doesn't know how to drive in their mind,
Mhm.
So something like that. Or are you less willing to explain yourself? um, or smooth things over. Like you'd rather just not talk about it and just walk away than you would to explain yourself.
Mhm.
Maybe that's part of menopause as well. We need to find these things out about ourselves, do a little soul seeking and say, you know what? Yeah, that would have bothered me a long time ago, but now I'm just blowing it off where maybe I might need to talk about it.
Sure.
Um, and then are you done managing everybody else's emotions? Like we've always,
Mm.
I think with being mothers, we're always in control of our kids' emotions. We don't want to have anyone upset,
Nope.
especially our children.
No.
So we're always in that mama bear mode, like, oh, that person might have offended my child, or and I think we need to look at that now as our children are aging and say, you know what? We have to let them handle their emotions and handle these things on their own because otherwise they will never learn. They'll always be looking to someone else to, settle their emotions for
Mhm.
them. And I think it's important that we let go right there. And then you have to also ask yourself, like, is this irritability that I'm feeling?
Yeah.
Or is this, clarity that I'm having? Like, you just have to ask yourself these questions because, there is help for certain things. Like, if you're irritable,
Sure.
there may be some supplements or herbs or,
Talking to somebody,
got-
going to a coach or a
absolutely
counselor,
a
absolutely.
counselor that you can go to and talk to them about these emotions you're having. But if you're feeling like these things that are happening are like you're more clear than you've ever been about certain things, maybe you just take it as, oh, these are clarity, and differentiate between the two so that you know where you're at, so that you
Yeah.
know. Um,
And I think encouraging our listeners to take some minutes with these questions because you're right. I think a lot of times too, and I've heard this from clients where their spouse or someone's like, "Oh, you're so irritable. You're so this,"
right,
and then you feel guilty or shameful. But maybe it's really not that you're irritable; that you just have less tolerance for crap.
right.
That you just aren't going to put up with
Yeah,
things. And even like when you were talking about, I think it's when you ask the question, "What things do you no longer have tolerance for?" I think it's important to kind of slow down and think about it. Like, what in the
hmm,
last week has frustrated you? And even make a list because if you're aware of it ahead, when it starts to happen, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, this, I have zero tolerance for this. It's going to feel a
right.
little bit less heavy when it happens.
Yeah,
And I think things like drivers or people that put their carts back at the, Target, but also like less, I know for me, I have less tolerance for gossip. Like I've had people in my life that talk about other people around me. And I'm like, if you're talking about them, you're probably talking about me. I don't want any part
right.
of gossiping
Yeah,
or, if I want information from somebody, I'm going to go to them. Don't triangulate and put me in the middle. If you want to know
right,
something, go to them. And
right.
I'm
Yeah.
really getting a zero tolerance for
Hmm.
that. And also like I don't need to be at everybody's table. If someone doesn't
Right.
invite me, someone doesn't want me somewhere,
Okay
I'm
with
okay
that.
with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Not everybody is going to like us.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It really
Just
is.
because I think the reason for that
Yeah.
part of it is because as we age, we begin to like ourselves. Like we do.
I
Like,
know.
we might have
Absolutely.
been our worst critic growing up when our
Mhm.
kids were younger. You're not really taking care of you, you're taking care of your children. So you're not always going to the store with your hair done.
Yeah.
I still don't. But I think you over time you're like, I really like the person that I am. And
Yes.
when you start to see your children and them becoming good people that you
Yes.
like and enjoy, I think that that's like where it's at. And then you're like, I guess I did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
You can see like your reward for all those years of raising children or whatever you
Yeah.
were doing, in the years leading up to menopause. And then at that point you think, you know what? I'm good with myself. I don't care if I have a friend in the world. At some points
No,
when
I
you're
think you're
feeling
right.
down, you're like, I like myself. I can hang out with myself. It's like that Miley Cyrus song.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I buy
is she
myself
going through
flowers.
menopause or what?
That's on my
She looks
menopause
young.
playlist. I actually have a Spotify list that, like, if I'm just feeling a little down or something, it's just a wide range of music, but that's
Yeah.
on there,
Yeah.
and
I
I'll
can
dance
buy
around my
myself
kitchen.
flowers. I
Yeah,
can, hold my own hand.
hands.
Yeah. I think that that's part of how we feel when we go through menopause. We're getting
You become
comfortable
happy with
and
yourself,
content.
and sometimes your body is changing, but you're right. Like, you don't need the approval of others.
Right.
You don't, you feel a peace about yourself. And if you're listening to this and you don't feel that peace, I think we both want to
It's
tell you
coming.
it's coming and you can get there. And maybe that
Yes.
does mean, talking through some things with
Right.
someone that you can trust. But it is a time where, you're not being rude, but you just feel at peace with yourself. I can
Yeah.
even see that in the way I dress. I
Mhm.
think I used to think I had to like dress a certain way for my
Right.
age. I probably dress a little bit not younger now, but like I don't want to look young,
You're
but
not
like
trying to
yes,
look for
but I
anything.
have
You're
a pair
trying.
of leather pants I love. And
Yeah.
sometimes when Andy and I go out, I wear them and my kids are like, I'm like, you know what? These leather pants look good on me and I feel
Yeah.
confident in
I'm
them
wearing
and
them.
I love them and I'm wearing them. And just some different things like that,
Yeah.
I don't care. And if someone wants to look at me and be like, "Why is she in those?"
Right.
Okay, you
Okay.
can think what you
Look
want.
how you want.
Yeah,
Right.
but you know what?
Right.
I love them. I don't think
I'm
Jesus
confident in.
disapproves,
Yeah.
and I'm good with it.
I'm good in these.
So, and
And
it
my
does
husband
model for
likes
your
them
kid.
too.
Yeah, my
Right.
husband does like them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and it is nice to be able to look at
And that
your
is a good
kids.
role model.
Yeah.
Like you said, that is a good role model for your kids. They want to see their parents confident.
Yes, and
They don't want
happy.
to
They
see
want to see your,
exactly.
and I think that's, I know we're kind of going off some of our bullet point here, but our kids, they do want us to be happy. And I think when
Mhm.
they leave home, they worry about us.
Yeah.
They worry that, like, and life doesn't stop when they leave. It
Hmm.
just looks different. And we
Right.
get a choice on how we're going to live it.
Hmm.
And I don't want my children responsible for my happiness. That's not their responsibility.
Right.
And I have so much joy. I miss them, but like cheering them on and seeing them all pursue their dreams
Oh, yeah.
and then, pursuing mine. We're in our 50s. We're not too old to have dreams
No.
and pursue. And it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's a,
And I
it,
think our kids love that.
yeah,
Like my girls, I never would have thought this,
yeah,
but they've had a lot of counseling and they
yeah.
went to a woman counselor and they've been counseled for years. But um, I remember when my mom, like when I was a senior in high school, she went and got her old job back at
Hmm.
Ford Motor Company. They called her back after like, you know, 30
Yeah.
years and she took it. My sister and I were kind of like, what? We were kind of upset with
Yeah.
that, but she felt like it was a good time for her.
Hmm.
We were older, we were in school, we were engaged with our friends and with our activities, and she was going to be gone while we were at school. But we felt like a little hesitant and we
Yeah.
didn't know if we wanted, and she was buying new clothes for herself and we were kind of almost jealous.
Yeah.
I know it sounds odd to be jealous of a parent,
No.
but we almost felt jealous.
You were sharing your mom now, like in a way.
Right.
You're used to having her home all the time. And now
Right. Exactly.
she was, I don't want to say more than a mom, but I
Yeah.
think, it is like, you're doing that. You're going there.
Like,
You're
wow,
traveling.
what are you
Like,
doing?
yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, you know, now that my husband and I do things, we go and
Yeah.
do things and they're always like, good for you.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know if it was because of their counseling that they're more accepting than I was
Hmm.
at that age, but
Yeah.
there's no jealousy there.
No.
It's more like a good for you
Yeah.
guys. I'm glad. And,
Yeah.
and it could have,
It's nice. My
yeah,
kids
it is
cheer me on
nice.
too, and it is nice when they're like, "I'm really proud of you, mom." I'm like,
You are?
it's like, really?
Like, I
But
wasn't
it's
trying to make you proud,
no.
but I'm glad you are.
Yeah, it's nice to, and it's nice to move from that. You're always a parent, but to move into more of a mentor role. And when you have that relationship, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's important for our daughters. Like, I never want to put anything I'm going through on my kids. And I believe
Right.
in that kind of that line between that. But
Right.
I think it's okay to talk a little bit about menopause or to share things. My mom never talked about, it was like, oh, menopause is no big deal. And
Absolutely.
I'm like, no big deal.
Yeah.
And to know, like, or if, like, there have been days where I have just physically felt stressed inside. I don't even know why, but I would just
Like
feel
an
this
anxiety.
tightness.
Yes.
And I tell the kids, I'm like, mom is just feeling a little stressed today.
Yeah.
If I'm snippy or something with you, you let me know because I'm not making excuses up, but I'm just feeling off.
Yeah.
And I tell the girls, I'm like, I don't know if I think, and so I want them to be aware so that when they get to that age,
Right.
and even with my sons, if they choose to get married or partner, they know that like their wife is probably going to go through something. And
Yeah.
it's important to just have these conversations so that we normalize it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. My sister and I just had this conversation. Just, she's 2 years younger than me. And she's like, now, when does this end? And we're
I
wondering,
know.
we've been going through it for years. And then we were looking back and we're like, oh, yeah, mom was definitely, like, my mom was definitely in it. And we didn't even know. We just thought she had just changed into a complete
Yeah.
monster at a certain age. And because she had changed.
Hmm.
She no longer like
It's just
was
different.
not that she was walked on
Yeah.
by any means. That's not what I mean to say, but she just would not tolerate certain things.
Sure.
She just would speak her mind and that was it. And we would always be like, "Oh my gosh, what's changed in mom?"
Yeah.
Well, she never talked about menopause. She
No.
never talked about this with us either. And now we know that's what
Now
it
looking
was.
back, you can see.
Oh,
And the
absolutely.
only way I knew my mom was in menopause because she never talked about, still she won't talk about it, was my one day my dad's like, we're getting full house air conditioning. And I'm like, and he's like, don't ask questions. Your mom has those hot things. And I was like, oh, okay. And
You're
for
like,
years we begged my dad, can we have air conditioning? Can we have air
"Oh yeah.
conditioning? No, the windows are great. The fresh air is
Oh
great.
yeah, put the fan
Yeah,
in and
and
let it blow
now I
hot
think
air out."
that was his way, but I don't even know if they talked about things, but my dad was a problem solver and like I'm sure he was like, your mom's miserable,
We're getting
i.e. we're
there.
all getting miserable, we're getting air conditioning, right? So that's how I found out, and that was the answer. If only putting air conditioning in could solve
Oh,
that.
I
But
wish it was.
I think that's the reframe too on the zero tolerance is that your nervous system is just more sensitive right now. That's a fact. Chronic stress plus these hormonal shifts equals less capacity. That's true. And it's not that you're being mean, it's your body saying, I really need some support, not more demands on me. Once again, this is just kind of explaining what might be going on. It's not excusing anything, but
Right.
being aware and then learning different responses to things. And I think, I don't know if there was a time that surprised you where you said something that you wished you could have swallowed, or maybe the first moment you didn't apologize for your reaction and how that felt. And even asking the listeners, like when you realized your irritation was pointing to a boundary you had ignored, because I think that's important. If you have reoccurring irritations, it's probably an indication that you need to set a boundary with somebody or a boundary around a situation.
Right. Like my sister. And her driving.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jody, if you're listening, but she inherited my father's road rage.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have it as much
Yeah.
anymore the older he gets. And he kind of looks back and laughs like, "Oh, that would have
Yeah.
bothered me." But I think she needs to get a chauffeur.
Yeah. That would be nice.
Yeah, so there's a boundary.
Yeah.
She realizes it. Just have someone
Yeah.
else drive you.
Yeah.
Because it really is, it can get you worked up. I
It
don't know if
can,
you've
and it's
ever
not
had
something
road
you
rage. It
control.
can
Now,
really.
and I don't struggle with that, but I think that's something to say too. Like we're all going to experience this differently. So if you're listening and you have completely different things you're
Right.
struggling, or maybe you don't have a big
Definitely.
struggle in menopause, we can't compare our symptoms. And I think that sometimes women will be brave enough to open up, and whoever they're opening up to, if that person can't relate or they shut them down, I want to encourage you, if you've had that kind of conversation with somebody and you were looking for support and validation, you didn't get it. I don't want you to think you're going crazy or there's something wrong with
Right.
you. We all have things that just show up differently. And what irritates me isn't going to irritate Leah, but we have to honor where we are
Right.
and work on what we have. And so I think it's really important not to compare what you're going through.
Right. And know that you are going to have times of
You are.
craziness.
You are.
If you haven't seen Fried Green
Yeah.
Tomatoes,
Oh,
the
I love that
Tawanda
movie.
moment, yeah, that's definitely menopause moment.
It
And
is.
we probably all referred to that at some point, even in our minds, not verbally, but like, oh, that was such a Tawanda moment, for us.
Yeah.
Because we just get to that age and you're not going crazy. You need
No,
to
you're
know
not.
you're not going crazy. This is all God's plan. There are things you can take. There are supplements. There are good things that we can do for our bodies during this time to nurture the things that are upsetting us inside.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too. There are
things we can
some
do.
really good,
And
yeah,
I think even like what we're doing, if you have a friend or, feel free to reach out to us. But you having coffee with another girlfriend who gets it, or even if you just
right.
invite someone out, like, can you just listen to me for a while? There's something about laughing. Like, I know we're talking
Oh
about a
yeah,
serious topic here, and we're giving you some science, but we're also giving you strategy, but we're also laughing because if you can't have some humor with things,
yeah. It's the
it
best medicine.
feels more heavy, right?
Right.
And so I wanna kinda go into
Yeah.
the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which I say this is a good one, but not a good one if you know, but brain fog.
Yeah.
Brain fog, and then thinking about brain fog plus overstimulation, right? So most women in menopause do experience brain fog. Plus, you might be overstimulated with all the things you have to do, and that can equal a meltdown. So if you've forgotten why you walked into a room, lost words mid-sentence, or felt overwhelmed by simple decisions, I just want to say, welcome to the club. Leah, do you ever feel like you're less sharp or just more overloaded, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. Definitely, the brain fog, and I've
Oh,
had
yeah.
this worse. There were worse times than others, and I really like now looking back, I think that brain fog has a lot to do with um carb intake. And I know that's just my
No,
opinion,
it's
but
interesting.
I feel like in the beginning of
Yeah.
menopause, I was like a carb queen. I could eat, like, I didn't even want to eat meat, anything. I could have just
Yeah. I was
stuck with
never full.
crackers
Yeah.
and yes, and just empty calories.
Mhm.
And the more I did that and got unhealthy like that, the more brain fog I had. But then when you realize like, "Oh gosh, this is related to what I'm
Yeah.
eating," and you can stop and turn your diet around a little bit, I think it makes a huge difference. And, some of these things you'll read about the mushroom coffees and all these things that we're seeing in menopause, we're like, "Ooh, maybe I need to buy the mushroom
Yeah,
coffee.
I
Maybe I
know.
need to do this." I think there's some truth to
Mhm.
mushrooms, and I really do think that maybe there's some like mushroom supplements you can do that might help. I mean, why not? If
Yeah,
your doctor
is
approves of
okay with
that,
it. Yeah, and
yeah,
trying different things because I've had some women swear by, one dose, I think it's one dose Rise. I've heard people,
there's
and
supplements,
yes,
Young Living. I love Young
magnesium.
Living. There's
Yes.
some supplements you can do to help with sleep, help with, the sweats at night. I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's why
know,
we haven't even talked about that. We'll probably
right.
do that in the next
And
episode,
so
but
if you ever need any of these, reach out to us. We
yeah,
do have lists of things you could try for menopause that would help you and give you some ideas of what things to look for. And if you're not sure what brain fog means, we can explain that to you.
sure.
So there's all kinds of things that you can come back to us with. We're open books. We have a lot of reference materials. We have a lot of things that we've used to get through certain things. So just reach out
Yeah.
and we would be more than willing to share those with you.
No, and I'll just drop our email is
Yeah.
lettinggoloudly@gmail.com, and you can follow us at Letting Go Loudly on Instagram. I think too, like brain fog, it is real. And I know I used to sometimes question my memory, like thinking, like, am I starting to lose my memory? Because I would literally, I remember the one example the kids love to laugh about is I was like, can you get me one of those? And I wanted to say plate, and I could not think of the word plate. And then I stopped and I'm like, the round thing you put food on. And they're like,
I've done
Mom,
that too.
what? And I'm like, I can't,
Yes.
they're like, you can't think of the word plate. In the moment, I couldn't. And in the beginning, I would beat myself up for like, Heather, what is wrong? And I would,
Like,
am I
do I have
losing?
dementia?
Yes. Am
Am
I
I,
losing?
yeah,
And the more I researched it, and I'm like, no, that is a part of the brain fog. And
yes.
I remember a doctor saying, Heather, are you trying to function like you did at 35 with a totally different system? Like, it's okay. Describe it like you're not, this is not dementia. This is a brain fog. And I think it's important to remember that hormones affect memory, focus, and sensory processing. And we are oftentimes balancing
Right.
brain fog with overstimulation. And midlife often comes with peak responsibilities, right? Work, kids, aging parents, relationships. And you may
You got a
have,
lot going on,
yeah, you
basically.
may have aging parents,
Yeah.
or you may have aging parents, you may have adult kids, you may have younger kids, you might have gotten married later in life, or you may be single.
Hmm.
And, a lot of times I love to speak to single women because this is one of my pet peeves is even in the workplace, I see, oh, well, give the work to them. They're single. Well, the single person doesn't have anybody at home to help carry the burden. They have
Right.
nobody at home to help them grocery shop, run errands. And I think
Right.
we need to normalize not giving the single person all the extra
Right.
responsibility. Oh, they can stay at work late. They can do this. No, they actually need more time to
Right.
work on to do things in their life because they don't have a partner at home or they don't have adult kids that can help.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to know that, it's not just hormones or stress in midlife. Sometimes it's a combination of both. And
Sure.
you might want to say your brain isn't broken, it's busy and it's tired. And this is the reframe that you need to write down and read to yourself daily. Daily.
Yeah, I agree with that. And finding those moments where you cannot find the word, but you know what you're talking about. I've done that a million times. Like, just, can you get me one of those?
Yeah.
No, those over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Yeah. Oh, the fork? Yeah, mom, I can get you a fork. It slips your mind.
Yes.
And
I
and then
know.
you do feel like you're going crazy, but you're not.
No,
You
you're
are
not.
not. This is normal. And for some reason, your brain is just adjusting with the reduction of
Yeah.
these hormones.
Yeah.
It's changing. Things are changing. So
And
it's
it,
okay.
it can be kind of scary if you're starting to feel things differently than you did before. And I know we did an episode 2, where you shared really great examples and instructions on like breathing and your vagus nerve and relaxing things. And I find myself sometimes stepping into my bedroom when I feel overstimulated. And like my brain is saying you're not, but my body
Right.
is saying you are. And I'll go in, I'll take some deep breaths. I'll do the vagus nerve. And sometimes I try to, where I just cross my hands over my shoulder and I just tap. I think it's called the butterfly.
Hmm.
And it just physically relaxes my body. Takes me 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I go back into whatever I'm doing,
Right.
cooking or whatever. And I realize I'm learning how to self-soothe myself
Hmm.
with an overstimulation that I never asked for,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what I do? I take a nap.
Mm,
I just find that sometimes I'm working and I'm getting worked up over something, and I'll think, you know what? Nap sounds really good. And not everybody can nap during the day,
no.
but I can take a power nap. I'll set my alarm for 20 minutes. I'll just go and like rest my brain. It's
Yeah.
like almost like it needs to just think
Relax.
of nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I'll come up and I'm like, I have a burst of energy. I know that's not for everybody because some people do not take naps. They'd be out for the rest of the evening.
Sure.
But I find that that's my way to just decompress.
No, I love that. And you can set a timer too. And
Oh, yeah.
I think though, sometimes in our society, oh, that's lazy. It's not lazy. Rest is so
No,
productive. Rest,
it's
you can't lay around all
crucial.
day, but
It's
rest
crucial
is
to our age.
productive.
Yes.
And I feel like we're more creative and our brains are more settled to think after we've had, a
Yeah.
power nap or we've
And
had
I
some
think
type of
what, eight and
rest.
a half to 9 hours of sleep is what's recommended for our age.
We need
Yeah.
to do an episode on sleep
Yeah,
because
we do.
that is not
It's not, I don't
continual.
know too many people who are getting 9 hours of sleep a night. I really don't. Because if you go to bed with the intention of
Yeah.
that, you could be up to go to the bathroom, a couple of times during the night. You could be doing other things and, it doesn't mean you're sleeping for that time,
No.
but it is crucial. And you do feel better when you get a good night's sleep. We
Absolutely.
all
And when I
do.
was younger, I could my head would hit the pillow and I was out. Now my head hits the pillow and I'm making lists in my head.
Tossing
I'm
and
thinking about a
turning.
conversation I had earlier, what I could have said. And my brain isn't shutting off.
Yeah.
And I'm not even on, like, I definitely am not on screens for a while before bed.
Yeah.
I do that, but it's just different.
Yeah.
It's just
We do
different.
need to do
Learning
one
how
on
to,
sleep.
we should do that.
We'll research a
Yep.
bunch of things.
And I want to move into our last point, and it is this: what actually helps, right? And it's not saying just calm down. And I think sometimes when we share what we're going through with somebody, and they might mean well, they're like, "You just need to calm down. Or you just need to
Right.
do this." Well, it's not helpful, and you can
Right.
tell them that. But we need to shift from trying to fix to support, and maybe that's the message that you need to tell your partner or your spouse or whoever maybe you've been sharing this with. It's not about fixing yourself. There's nothing broken. You're not broken in menopause. It's about supporting the version of you that exists now.
And
So
there's some, yeah,
what are some
yeah,
questions you could
some
ask
questions you
yourself?
could ask. What change if you were to stop pushing through, what would change for you?
Yep.
Okay, maybe, you stop with some of the behaviors. What would change if you stopped caring so much about, other people, or, what would change? What would be better or worse for you? Where are you asking too much of
Mm,
yourself? And that's a big one because
yes.
sometimes we have these expectations of ourselves, maybe that we had when we were 30, but at 50, we've slowed down a bit. That's 20 years between. We may not be expected, we might expect these things of ourselves, but we may not be able to complete these things at 50 that we were able to do. So
Absolutely.
it's about letting go of these expectations of yourself that you had, and maybe just saying, okay, I'm asking too much of myself. I need to be able to be happy with what I'm doing here,
Mhm.
what I'm doing now, and not worry so much. What if rest wasn't earned but required?
I love that.
So, we sometimes you always hear like work yourself to exhaustion, when you're
Yeah.
working, or we all work till exhaustion. Well, no, what if we stop working and we actually put the emphasis on sleep, and we get the sleep we need, and we don't let that interfere with anything else. We don't get up early to do certain things that we used to do because we're busy sleeping, and we're
Mhm.
taking that time to rejuvenate our brain and rejuvenate ourselves and our bodies for the day. So think how that would change if you put the emphasis on not so much being up but being asleep. What would it look like to design your life around your capacity, not your expectations? So
Mm,
how does that affect you? Our
I love that.
capacity of life. Yeah, we just are capable of certain things. So your capacity is your limit. Don't try to live beyond those capacities.
Mhm.
And maybe look at, your new expectations. Maybe reframe those expectations that you have.
Yeah, are they expectations that other people are putting on you?
Right.
And so I think a few practical, gentle tools that we want to encourage our listeners to use is having fewer commitments and not better time management. You don't have to say yes to everything.
Right.
um, Built-in decompression time, having time during the day, and sometimes that's in the morning, sometimes that's in the afternoon or evening, sometimes it's when you're sitting in your car at a red light or you're waiting, but take those deep breaths.
Yep.
And if you need a refresher, listen to episode 2, but have some built-in decompression time. Read a book. I know, like, I'll keep a stack of books on my side table, and I just like to
Just
pour a
to
cup of
grab.
tea and read for a little bit, and
Yep.
just read for like a
Yep.
half hour. Walking. I can't tell you how important
Oh yeah.
walking is. Breath work, quiet or nervous system resets. I talked about how sometimes I'll just slip into my room for a few minutes, do some deep breath work,
Hmm.
and you don't even have to leave the scene. But
Right.
I like to just go. My room is my sanctuary. It's very calming in
Hmm.
there, and I like to sit and do some breath work. Sleep protection like it's non-negotiable. Even though you may not be sleeping well, protecting your sleep. And if your sleep isn't good at night, putting in some naps where you can to be able to
Hmm.
get that rest.
And I think it's important, like this with the sleep protection. Sometimes you're invited to something that's later than your bedtime,
Yeah.
and really taking a look at those things to see, like, do I really want to, put aside my sleep for this event
Yes.
or something like that? And really look at those. Maybe
Maybe
it's
it's not
worth it,
worth, yeah.
maybe it isn't.
Or maybe you leave early. I know Andy and
Yeah.
I will talk about when we wanna leave before we go out to something where
Yes.
other people are,
Yeah.
and
Setting
we
limits.
make a limit with each other,
Yep.
and then we hold each other accountable. And
Yep.
even if we're having a great time, typically we're like, "You know what?
Yep.
We wanted to be home or we have something the next morning," and
Yeah.
we talk about it before we go out. And that goes into, like, telling people what you need. So if you're feeling, because I hear from so many clients too that not only are they struggling with all of this, but they don't feel known, they don't feel seen by their spouse or their family. They feel like they're invisible
Hmm.
because of what they're going through. And when
Right.
they open up to somebody, it gets dismissed. So then they don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
So find a safe person. Sometimes that's your
Yep.
spouse. Sometimes that's, a good friend. Sometimes that's a counselor or somebody who
Right.
doesn't really know you personally,
Yep.
where you can share and tell people what you need. And then I think it's important to a permission piece, right? Saying no without over explaining. Like it's okay to say no. It's okay if someone asks you to do something, to be like, I hear your request, but I'm not able to do it today,
Right.
or I'm not able to do
Yeah.
that. No is a yes to you.
Right. And we don't have to overcommit anymore. Like, I feel like when I was raising my kids, I
Yep.
was always like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
make the
Yeah.
cookies for the PTO. I'll do this.
Yes.
I'll do that. You don't have to do that.
No.
You don't have to do that anymore. We're good.
You're a great person and you can say no.
We're good.
And I think creating space without feeling guilt and naming what's happening inside of you instead of internalizing shame. You're not broken.
Hmm.
You don't need fixed. Your body is changing and you need to just be aware of those changes. When we name it out loud, we stop turning it inward. And I think that's a really important message for
Hmm.
all of us.
Yep. I agree. So, um, as we bring this conversation to a close, remember this: In this season of life, with shifting hormones, fuller plates, and far less tolerance for what drains you, your reactions aren't a failure. They're information. You don't need to push through or pretend you're fine. Fine. You can create space for rest, clarity, and support. Choose the one or two things that truly matter to you and communicate your needs honestly and release that pressure to be who you used to be. Letting go loudly with self compassion, boundaries, and a whole lot of grace. And watch how much lighter this season can feel.
And there you have it. Another episode of Letting Go Loudly is in the books. I hope you're walking away feeling heard and encouraged and more empowered to live out your version of letting go loudly. Remember, life can be hard and beautiful at the same time. Choose what you're ready to release and make room for the good that's already here. If this episode resonated with you, subscribe, like, share with a friend, and leave a review. It really does help us grow. And you can find us on Instagram at Letting Go Loudly, where you can connect with other women who are learning to let go loudly and share how you navigate share how you're navigating menopause. Friends, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. Our email is lettinggoloudly@gmail.com. We'll see you next time, friends, and continue to let go loudly.
Goodbye.